Israeli Chamber Project was founded in 2008, bringing together a very distinguished group of young Israeli musicians for concerts and educational outreach activities, both in Israel and abroad. We're structured as a chamber music society.
We're quite a broad pool of players, and I guess that's also one of the special things about us. We have a string quartet, we have a clarinet, we have two pianists, we have a harpist, which I don't think many groups have. We have a great harpist, for that matter.
Currently, 5 of us live in New York, either still enrolled or recently graduated from the Juilliard School, 2 in Berlin, and 1 in Israel.
Here in New York, we would like to have a home venue or something of that sort to really come back to every year. We feel that a lot of people here can relate to what we offer. The fact that things on stage change, or you see a duo and then a quartet and then a trio and a harp, no harp, piano. You have all these colors on stage, and I think that really creates a lot of interest in the audience.
In almost every one of our concerts, we try to find at least 1 or 2 opportunities to speak to the audience. This establishes a connection on a level that everyone understands, rather than just coming out and playing.
שמחנו מאוד שמתן פורת נענה לבקשתנו וכתב את היצירה שאנחנו נשמע במיוחד הסבב הקונצרטים האחרון שלנו. היצירה עצמה מבוססת על הרצאה של הסופר בורכס, שבה הוא טוען שמקור של המילה nightmare, סיוט באנגלית, הוא בעצם סוס לילה, שכן mare היא סוסה באנגלית.
One of my goals as an artistic director is to add some collaborations and have classical music more accessible to a wider audience. The Israeli experience that we try to show is also the fact that we show Israeli repertoire. And commissioning new pieces is our way to just also to communicate to younger audiences. You know, we always get this fear by some presenters, especially in Israel, where they say, "Oh, are you sure this will, this new Israeli music? Are you sure it won't scare away the audience?" And what happens is exactly the opposite. Matan Porat, he's a good friend of mine for many years, and he grew up with us. He wrote a piece for us, thinking of us. He knows exactly how I play, how Michal plays, and he wrote the parts thinking of us. That's something very special, and I think you can see that on stage, and the audience can feel that. Classical music is a high form of art, and if you have no knowledge, then it will be much harder to enjoy. Sometimes we show some effects. For instance, in Matan Porat's piece, there are some effects, and if we want to explain before people think that it's a mistake, we tell the audience about that before, and then they, that's he just spoke about that. אני מצטער מתן, לפעמים יש לי כאלו שאני עושה בפני טקסט.
גם לפעמים בא כזה.
גם בברקות עשיתי זה, כן.
In creating the Israeli Chamber Project, it was very important to us that our concerts in Israel take place not only in its urban and cultural centers, but also in more remote towns where there's very little or no exposure to live classical music. And in our first tours there last season, we did in fact perform on some of the major series in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, but also brought the project to Arad and Mitzpe Ramon in the Negev Desert, Kibbutz Bar'am, Kibbutz Eilon in northern Israel, Ma'alot Tarshicha, which is a mixed Arab and Jewish population, and Shfar'am, which is an Arab city where we not only played concerts but also worked with students at the local Beit al-Muzika Conservatory.
הראשון היה מצוין ובשני ברח לך. מצוין. עוד פעם? Let's sing it.
Some of them have their teachers, and they do get some people coming in to give master classes. They have concerts once in a while, orchestras or even chamber music, but what we give to them is the combination of both. We teach them during the day, we give master classes or a private lesson, and they sit in the room with you and learn from you, and then see you perform after that in the concert, the result of what could happen if they would just stick to it or they'll keep practicing.
It's wonderfully heartening to see these things unfold because very often the students don't have an opportunity to hear musicians come in from the outside. And so they're incredibly enthusiastic, and we were greeted very warmly by the conservatory's administration and faculty, and we're returning there again and again.
Oh, that was great! That was great!
Psychologically, it's a special experience for a kid to see someone really close and then seeing him on stage. And that's something I don't think too many groups do or at all, and especially the places we go to in Israel where they don't have some of these aspects.
The students can see that hopefully we can not only talk but also practice what we preach. Recently we went to Mitzpe Ramon, which is in the southern Negev desert of Israel. We encountered road signs warning of camel crossings, which we don't really see every day, and put on a concert in a jazz club there, where there had not been any classical music concerts before. And when we got to the venue, it was a dinky old upright piano that we had to fiddle around with to make any sound at all. We had to remove the wood plating on the front and under the strings.
The sound was horrible, and eventually it sounded like a percussion instrument rather than a piano.
And the room was filled with people from the age of, I would say, 5 or 6 to retired people.
We had people sitting on the floor, kids and adults.
We came in with one piece. It was the Bartok Contrasts. Spoke about it, spoke about the history of the piece, the history of the composer, played little excerpts of it, and then finally ended with a performance of the piece from beginning to end, taking questions from the audience after that.
The relationship with the community and with the audience is really important. And chamber music just technically is the easiest way. You play in smaller halls, you can talk to the audience without a microphone. It's more intimate, and I think that's, in that matter, chamber music is probably the ideal way of communicating with classical music.
There is this incredible hunger for classical music in even the smallest towns. In some of these places, there aren't regularly scheduled concerts. In some, there haven't been in a while. And so, with very little publicity, we're able to attract a huge crowd that says something towards both the mission of the group, the quality of the music making, but also that there's a real need for this. Doing the remote, peripheral city concerts is an incredible challenge for us. Logistically, it's incredibly difficult to put on a concert where there's no foundation for one. Everyone does everything. One of the funniest things is trying to load a harp into the van, which also has 6 or 7 people in it, and that is always a bit of a trying experience. But road stories are and will continue to be a big part of the tour. It's part of the fun. All 8 core members of the ensemble are from Israel, and that's where we grew up and initially started studying music. This is why it's so important for us to give something back now to the place where we all started. We all feel that there is a special dynamic when the 6 of us, the 8 of us, however many there are in any particular piece, create a piece in a room.
One of the special things about us is, I think, the fact that we all come from the same background. Some of us grew up together, and I mean, in rehearsal process, things go really, really fast and not too cordial.
Rehearsals tend to be very dynamic, shall we say, with no holds barred, and often this brings out the best in people. We've been very fortunate that in only our 2nd season we have been able to bring the Israeli Chamber Project to the States and to audiences here. Earlier this season we performed both in New York City and in Washington, D.C. We'll be on the West Coast later in the spring, and the response has been tremendous.
One of our goals is to have 1 foot in Israel and 1 foot abroad. In Israel, that means to have possibly 3 or 4 tours a year and go back to all those same places where we teach at and we play at. And abroad, we would like to share this experience with more people.
Our concerts in the States so far have been limited to the core members of the ensemble that actually live here. But we hope to change that and bring all of our members with us wherever we go in the coming season or 2. We hope to be a breath of fresh air, extending our reach through the States and reaching some of the series in Europe and South America as well in the near future.